Hello, I'm Alyson Toole. I was born and brought up in Stow, moved away for 20 years and came back. And I'm the director of the Council on Aging as well. I've always wanted to join the Peace Corps, do something to help others. And so I found this organization in Hudson through Bridges to Malawi and decided to go on their trip last April. So I had the unique, most people that go are working in the hospitals or get assigned to, like JT was construction, everybody has a set thing that they do. I was fortunate enough to be able to float around, and I got to experience a little of everything, which was wonderful.
So before we get going on the slideshow, I want to teach you all a bit about Malawi in their language. So you're going to learn how to speak Malawian. Mulibonji. Mulibonji. Dili bueno caino. Aye.
So this is Chichewa, right?
This is their language, Chichewa. And one advantage, I guess, that I had working on the construction site was nobody spoke English. So I had to pick up phrases pretty quickly. But what I just did, that's an official greeting that they have for one another. Muliwanji is good day, so you can say it in the morning, afternoon, or the evening. And Dili Bueno is, oh, I am fine, thank you, and how are you? And if you want to respond to that, you can say, Zikomo Kumbiri, which is thank you very much. That's your language lesson for the evening.
So when I heard about Malawi, I was like, where on earth is Malawi? I don't know where it is. But it is below the equator. It's a southeastern country, landlocked. And I was a little nervous thinking going to a foreign country and not knowing what was there. But I learned that they're a former British colony and their primary language is English, even though they speak Chichewa. But so that comforted me a little that I knew they'd speak English. And it's, former British colony, Christian-based primarily. And when I Googled Malawi, they said it was the heart of Africa, a very peaceful nation, not much uprise. We found the people wonderful, warm, welcoming, and appreciative, but they are probably one of the top poorest countries in the world, unfortunately. So Malawi is the size of probably Pennsylvania, the state of Pennsylvania, the whole country, or if you squish it up into New England. So it's a pretty small country. I just got a few statistics so you could see, and it's fascinating the difference between the two countries. Life expectancy, you can see in Malawi the average age 62 years of age. The United States is 80. Annual income, or we lived with a family with a doctor and a nurse, and I think, they said they made a couple $100 a month or so. They just didn't make much. So this was shocking. The women died during labor. How many women per 1,000? It was 634 in Malawi. It's so sad.
More than half?
Yeah, more than half. Children die before the age of 1. 43 in Malawi compared to 6 in the United States. The biggest shocker of all was electricity. We take it all for granted here. That's something that's a no-brainer. You don't even think about electricity. And over there, look at this. Only 9% of the population have electricity. no internet access. It's just mind-boggling when you go there and to see that. I won't go through the list, but it's fascinating to see that clothing is very expensive over there. Dairy is very expensive. They don't have a lot of cows. But if you quick look at the prices, some of the things really stand out. Inexpensive
but
beer.
They have beer.
Yeah.
They don't have beer.
They must, right. So we were going with 36 people, and you bring 2 duffel bags each, and 1 3/4 of the bags are filled with medical supplies to bring over there. So they really give you only a small portion of one of the duffel bags to put your personal belongings in. And so when we were going to the packing party and we all brought our duffel bags and we're all packing the medical supplies, I was seeing a lot of blue duffel bags, red duffel bags, and I'm like, wait a sec, when we're at the airport and they're all coming down, it's going to be so hard to find whose is whose. So JT had the brilliant idea to put his initials on the bags. So it was a big kick when we're at the airport. They're like, JT, here comes your bag, because it was so obvious. But it was very helpful, because you think of how many duffel bags, and they all look alike. So JT, that was a great little trick you thought of. So I thought I'd just show you kind of, we're at Boston Logan Airport, leaving 6 in the morning. We fly to Washington, D.C., and then a short layover. And then, so that was like United Airlines, and then in Washington we get on Ethiopian Airlines, and we fly to Ethiopia. And that's quite a long flight. And then from Ethiopia, we transfer to fly over to Malawi, Lilongwe, Malawi. So Ethiopian Airlines was fantastic. It was, they fed you every 4 hours and lots of entertainment. The time went by pretty quickly, I felt. So after all this, we land in the capital of Malawi, Lilongwe, and then we have to all pack into these vans and put all our duffel bags on the roof and get ready for a long journey, 2.5-hour ride to our village.
Which was the village of Tuntama.
Yeah. You don't pronounce the M, right? Tuntama. And you might have met Peter this November. He had come and spoke with his wife Jacqueline, but he was our connection over there. Even though Dr. Brian Liss brings us from here, but he's the man. You have to get your visa, do all the paperwork to get permission to arrive there. So he was our contact. So this is some of the landscape as we're traveling to get to our village. We all of a sudden slowed down. I'm like, what's the traffic jam? And it's like, oh no, the cattle are crossing the road or something. Beautiful sights along the way. There's a lot of poorness, so they can't keep up with the maintenance of the buildings and stuff.
The socioeconomic level is extremely low, but a lot of the buildings you're going to see in the pictures are abandoned because of death. One of the biggest issues that they deal with is malaria, and it really does affect entire families. And if the malaria doesn't get them, the famine usually does.
And AIDS is another.
And the other thing that has come about in Malawi is the spread of AIDS. So you have the 3 major causes of death in this small country.
A couple of their primary income is tobacco and corn, maize. But we saw a lot of tobacco fields and the drying of the leaves. Most of the roads we traveled on were dirt roads, really poor condition, and we're bouncing around. I'm like, I'll never complain about potholes again. I was like, duh, 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 duh. I was like, wow, this is crazy. Very few vehicles. We see a lot of this one we came up upon, and we had to back up for quite a ways to get to a road which widened enough so they could get past us. So we were the ones that had to back up, not the donkeys and the load of tobacco. Bicycles everywhere, main transportation.
Turn the lights off a little bit?
Sure.
Yeah, does that help with the... Sure, good idea, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
This boy has sticks for fuel. They have very shortage of fuel. They don't have a lot of trees, so Bridges to Malawi, one of their projects is planting trees. But he's gathering the sticks to bring back for fuel for cooking.
If you have a bike in that country, you're considered middle class.
Wow.
Because what it does is it allows you not to just to transport. I don't need that. I think everyone can hear me. Allows you to transport produce and supplies to and from in much larger quantities than just on your back, or as the women you'll see will do on their heads.
So after traveling all that time, 34 hours later, from leaving Boston, at 6 a.m., we get here Sunday at 4 p.m. And we arrive at Peter's house, and Peter has a list and says, Alyson, JT, you're going to be in building number 12. So they line up everybody and assign them housing. And we're actually on a compound. The hospital owns all the buildings, and they provide housing for their medical staff. So it's a very safe compound. The water's filtered, and so we didn't have to worry about contaminated water. So we got assigned to this house, and the father's a physician assistant, the mother is a nurse, and they had a bunch of children living with us, so that was fun. This is our host family.
Yes, her name was Me Grace, his was Amon, their children Upele, Rebecca, and then Me Grace's sister was also living with them because the situation over there, she had fallen on hard times with her little tyke.
So I decided to take pictures of the rooms. We had pretty good conditions. They give you each a single little bed, and we brought our own mosquito netting. There's hooks in the ceiling. Everybody, you always sleep under a mosquito netting so you don't get bit by mosquito and get malaria. That fan is very deceiving because I arrived, I overheat very easily, and I was beet red and just sweating profusely, and they were really worried about me, so they were able, in the village, they spread the word, and they got a fan to put in for me. I was just dying of the heat, but I got used to it. It's just when we left here, it was still cold, and you get there, and it's 95 degrees and 100% humidity, so it took a while to get used to. But so over there, similar to probably in Europe, they'll have one room that's the toilet room, and then another room that's the bathing room, and then outside is the sink, and then the kitchen. While we were there, JT would go into the city and buy with his own money some. You should tell them what you got to help them, because the shower has running cold water, but it didn't have the head of the shower kept falling off the spigot. And they give you a bucket. You can see a gray bucket there. That's a 5-gallon bucket, I guess, maybe. And they'd heat it up, and they'd give you your bucket of hot water with a cup, and you basically took a sponge bath. But I actually didn't mind the cold shower because I was dying of the heat. But JT ended up putting the toilet didn't have a seat, so he bought a seat for the toilet. He bought a shower head. He bought some equipment and to thank them for hosting us. And we pay maybe around $10 a day to live there, and for room and board, and they feed you. And if you're going to be gone for the day, they'll pack you a lunch. They're very helpful. They would wait on us first, serve us our meal, and then their family would eat. And I noticed that if we didn't finish our food, you'd see in the kitchen they'd be scraping and saving and probably reusing it for everybody else.
They would eat it themselves off of our plates. They wasted nothing. But one tradition that they did have, which I found to be really heartwarming and would be a nice thing in this country to do, is as you sat at the table, one family member would wash your hands for you.
They'd have the pitcher of warm water.
And you put your
You
hands
pour
out
it.
and you pour it and you wipe, and a towel, and then in turn, you would then go and you would wash someone else's hands at the table.
Health fund, yeah.
So we were fortunate to have 2 high school kids assigned to our house with us, one from Neshoba, one from Hudson. And it was fascinating seeing them because they're 17, 18-year-olds, and they're like, ooh, what's this? And then they would take a lot of stuff and start picking at it, and, oh, I'm not going to eat this. And I'd say, hey, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, my mother told me there's kids starving in Africa, and we're here right in Africa, so I was cracking up. And then when I saw in the kitchen, they were scraping and saving our leftovers, I was like, we really have to eat it all or don't eat it. But those were white bread with just butter, right? And then maybe some banana fritters and some sausage. The mother really wanted to please us, and she'd say, how come you're not eating fruit, or how come you're not eating salad? And I said, we were told at the travel clinic not to eat any raw vegetables or fruit. It has to be cooked because we don't want to get an intestinal virus. So it was helpful. So the mother's like, well, good, thanks for letting me know, because she goes, I can cook up the cabbage or the lettuce and cook it first, or give you an orange that you can peel maybe. But limited amounts of protein. It would be a lot of rice. There's fried cabbage there, a little tomato, and 1 egg. They had chickens in their backyard. They tried, since they get $10 a day from us, that's a lot of money to them, so they do make an effort to serve us more food than what they would ordinarily eat. But this was a fish straight from Lake Malawi, and I love the reaction of the high school kids. They're like, the eyeball is still under looking at it, like, ugh! And I'm like, oh, come on. It's good for you. So we were watching the chickens in the backyard running around, and they do a lot of the cooking outside because it's hot. And I was like, oh no, what are we having for dinner? It's like, they don't just kill their chickens every day. This was a special occasion. It happened to be JT's birthday, and they wanted to do something special, so they cooked chicken for us. But they usually have the chicken more for the eggs.
It's a high honor over there to be served chicken for a meal. Not beef, not pork, not lobster, none of that. Chicken. And it's because they're taking away a food source for themselves and their family to give to someone else.
I couldn't get over the hard work, though. They'd say, do you have any laundry? We'll wash your laundry. And they're just doing it all by hand, hanging it to dry. The dishes, and they have corn right in their backyard, too. But they're always working, no resting at all. So I saw a bicycle come in and pick up the little boy in our house, and I said, where's he going? She goes, oh, daycare. We pay this man to come pick him up and take him every day to daycare. I thought that was unique on a bicycle. Seeing people walking around. I was in a van that had probably the lines from the defrost in the back or something, so that's why there's lines with a photo with the woman. But a lot of walking. We'd be driving miles and miles on dirt roads, and you'd see people walking, and I'm like, where are they coming from? Because it's not like there's a village close by. The fun part is we got to ride on top of the van, too. But I kept getting booted off because they're like, it's for the young people, the high school kids. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm young, too. I wanted to ride up there. But it was a lot of fun being up on the van. We had the 12 high school kids with us this year. Kids would come out of the woodwork. They were everywhere. They'd come running to see us. What do they call us, JT?
Yeah, we're the circus that comes to town. Another Chichewa word is Azungu, which is what we all are.
Like foreigners.
A group of whites.
Azungu,
If you're
Azungu.
by yourself, you're a Mazungu. 'Cause 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 'cause
Yeah, I envisioned when we would stay there, we'd be under thatched roofs and really roughing it, but we had regular quarters. But I did see other people. See, I had to do a selfie to prove I got to be up on that roof. But I was amazed. I saw so many little ones running around loose, no parents anywhere around, and I'm wondering, it's unbelievable. So I did ask some people, and they said, oh, they know to come home when it gets dark. So it's kind of like us when we were growing up in the old days. I think they're taking the corn off the cob. So I just was heading into the village, decided to just take some pictures of people working. The butcher shop was kind of made me want to become a vegetarian because the flies were all on the big slabs of meat, and that was a little much. This fascinated me. This guy's riding his bike, and I'm looking, and he's transporting chickens on a cage strapped to his bike. Fish market, all fish, open air, flies everywhere. Farmer's market. The kids just loved. I brought a Polaroid camera, and so I would take pictures of the kids and then give them their instant picture, and they would love it because they're like, they'd never seen themselves before, so that was a big hit. So there's an orphanage on the compound of the hospital, and all the housing was an orphanage. So we would, the high school kids would, and I would volunteer there a lot. We'd go to the orphanage, spend time with the kids. Pretty shocking conditions. These rooms would be packed with beds, and over 100 children were living here, all ages. And they just were so needy and clinging to you and crying, wanted to be picked up. And we all, when we were you bond with them over 2.5 weeks. By the end, we all wanted to adopt them and bring them home. They're so sweet. We had a movie night. They fall asleep. This little guy had real bow legs. I fell in love with him because he was kind of the odd one no one liked. And I was asking the doctors if they could do anything because his legs were deformed. When you put him down, they'd be crying, "Don't leave." It was so very hard. We went and visited. I went to visit the schools. Bridges to Malawi provides solar panels because the schools don't have electricity. And then they provide computers, and so some of my days I would go to the schools and teach the kids how to use the computer. And one of the days we were at a school where JT was in the back on the property building a dormitory, so he was there that day. Tons of children that all want to use the computer, but there would be 8 computers for the whole school. And so they'd try a computer club after school to allow more time for kids.
It's about 10 to 12 students per computer.
Wow.
So our Americans are big and much taller and, I don't know, stronger. So these kids were like, wait a sec, you were a senior in high school? You look like an adult. They couldn't get over that they're all the same age. So every day when I went to a different school, I'd ask what students would want to come with me so we could rotate. The students that come from America that went with us could go to, they could work in the clinics, they could go to the school, they could work with JT on a construction site, so they got an opportunity to do a lot. I guess I'll skip that. So volunteering at this is the village hospital that's on the compound that we live. And so everybody that works there gets to live in housing on site. So I saw this beautiful ambulance, look brand new, and I talked to them and they said, the trouble is they got a grant, but nobody factored in money for gas. So that's the classic thing when people want to help and they give you something, but they don't factor in the operating expense. Hospital, it was fascinating to learn that in a hospital, they only provide a bed and the medical care and medicine. They're not going to have sheets or any linen. They're not providing food. You're not having private rooms. You're all packed in. And so a lot of families, it looked like tent city outside the hospital where families all camping to cook meals to bring into their loved one. So it was pretty shocking. This is Dr. Brian Liss. Every morning we would meet and listen to the doctors. They'd do rounds, talk about everything, and then we'd head off to help work. It was fascinating watching Dr. Liss when he'd be examining a patient's spleen, and then he'd teach the student to feel it. His big thing was kids nowadays that go to medical school don't have hands-on. They'll just say, oh, these are the symptoms, okay, run these tests, get a CT scan, do this, run labs, but no hands-on. So he wanted high school kids in America to have an opportunity to go to a third world country and do hands-on. You don't have all that fancy equipment. So this was a way for them to really, get in and experience what it's like. A lot of the children in the hospital would have their mothers by their sides.
Actually, in the bed.
Yeah, in the bed, staying with them. So then we would get bussed. We'd leave at 6 in the morning, get bussed into a city hospital. So if I'm working in the hospital, I had to wear my scrubs. They have different rules. If you're in the schools, I had to wear a skirt, and it's very conservative. You can't show much skin. Lots and lots of sick children. It was very, very emotional, upsetting. Again, I brought my camera and I took pictures of a mother and a child, and I'd give it a Polaroid and I'd give them a photo of it, and that just meant the world to them. People were just chasing me down. Me. They all wanted pictures. So I went through hundreds. My personal belongings is all film to bring. This woman came from Boston Children's Hospital, and she was very helpful. She was teaching some of the challenging things that they needed to do. But radiologist from Tufts, you can see in his hand, it's like the size of a cell phone, and then he has a little microphone, and this boy was crying, he had an abscess, and they wanted to just see with an ultrasound machine what was fluid building up. They had to cut and drain it. But it's amazing how maybe Dr. Liss would say 5 years ago they had huge ultrasound machines, and they've now down to this size technology. So they donated 3 of them this year. They call Butterfly.
Yeah, they're called butterfly ultrasounds, and they run about $2,000. Sounds like a lot. 5 years ago, when he brought over the ultrasound machine that he brought, it was $55,000.
Wow.
So this new technology is really going to help make a difference for them over there, because you can actually hook that device into any cell phone, and it works.
It's amazing. So this woman, right away with the ultrasound, they were like, oh my God, her uterus is bursting, literally bursting. She has to get in right away. And they said, do you want to witness the birth? And we're like, sure. So they said, okay, scrub in. So we all scrubbed in. And so I was able to witness the birth of the little baby. It was very successful. There was one room, it was really, really hot. And I said, what's this? And they said, oh, that's the incubator, kind of the, yeah, is that what they call it? Incubator. But it's just a hot room for premature. They don't have. Who knew malnourishment's a big problem, so they have to weigh the children on a regular basis to make sure they're not losing weight. And I found it fascinating how they weigh the kids. If they're really little, on the left side they take a blanket and hook it on the hook and they hang. If they're bigger, they say just jump up and hang onto the hook. And they weigh them that way. It was fascinating.
That's a vegetable. Yeah.
It's fascinating. This, I had the opportunity, the house mother was working at an albino clinic, and she goes once a month, and she said, Alyson, do you want to come with me? I was like, yes. What an experience. So we came with a city ophthalmologist and a city dermatologist. There was a team of us, and we drove way out to the bush for hours to get to an area where there were a lot of albinos, and they kind of were staying together. And it's over in Africa, there's superstition that they're evil and devils, and they murder them or something. Yeah, there's something about their bones.
They think their bones have a magic to them. So they actually will take the babies, albino babies, and they'll kill them and grind the bones.
Just horrible.
Out in the bush.
So being the Lions Club, I thought you might be interested in the vision test that they do, and it's so old-fashioned. Look at this kit he has. It's just old-fashioned. But I bet these where the glasses go when you donate them. Then dermatology, it's very hard to find sunscreen over there. And if you do, it's like $40 for a little tube. So when I came back from my outing, I asked all the high school kids, I said, at the end of the trip, do you want to donate your unused sunscreen and give it to the albino clinic? Because they're just burning up. They're getting horrible skin cancer. Their eyes get fried and burnt out. There's no sunglasses. It's a huge need. You can see all the blisters on their arms from burning. Now, JT, take it over. This is his, he was on the job site with this.
So I went over there and participated in the supervision and actually hands-on construction project in a little village called Chumwabvi. And it was for a girls' dorm for 60 girls. The reason why the dormitory needed to be built is because the girls were walking 20 to 30 kilometers one way to get to school. And then this was their living conditions. There were 40 girls per room.
Oh my God.
And no, that's not stripped down. That is exactly how it was. And then while I was there, I saw the bathhouse, which is the one on the right. The wall had collapsed, the roof is gone, the front wall was down. The wall that I'm standing near was about 3 feet high. And this is how the girls were supposed to bathe. And so what they would do is one girl would kind of stand in front of that half wall while the other girls were literally down like this, trying to bathe, and the girl on the end, where there really was no wall, would stand there with a blanket. And they would swap off, and that's how they were bathing. So we decided besides, that's part of my construction team, and yep, that's me.
Yeah,
Those
no
are the
machines.
tools. There's no machines. It's all hand done. And that tool that I'm wielding there is actually really ingenious because it has different heads. That's almost like a cutting hoe, and then you can change it for an axe, and then you can change it kind of for a shovel setting. They work with what they've got, which is not a lot. And the way we got our water was the gals on the left, I call them my 3 angels, because they would be up at 4 a.m. in the morning and they would start. And they would walk a half a mile to where the pump was, fill the 5-gallon buckets, and walk the half mile back and dump it into 55-gallon drums. And they did that all day. The only break that they took was to make lunch for myself and any of the other folks that came with me, because they were so appreciative for our help. But there we are with some of the high school kids working. The one on the right, that actually has a neat little story. One of the big things we're trying to do over there is girl empowerment, women empowerment, because they've been looked down upon for so long, yet they're at least 50% of the population. So they can contribute and actually help to build things up. So the day I was there with the 2 girls, Erin and Sarah, the truck pulls up in the sand and I kind of turned and barked and went, Erin, Sandra, get your butts up there, I want that thing emptied. So when they jumped up, the guys that were up there, they went and to take the shovels, and the guys went like this. Well, without me saying anything, the 2 girls went, no, me, and pulled the shovels. And the guys were like standing back, so they're just going to town, clearing it. And then where the girls' dormitory was, all of a sudden, all the girls are outside, they're all whispering back and forth, and I'm like,
The girls from the school?
yeah. So I walk up and I'm like, what's that? And they're pointing. They're girls, they're girls. I said, yeah, they're girls. No, but they could not fathom at first that girls could do that. That's considered skilled labor, by the way. And they could not fathom that that was being done. So finally, after a little bit, there's one girl in the back that finally went, girl power? And I went, girl power! Oh! And so I got, they all, oh, and they all laughed. And I figured, okay, nice little seed planted there. Until the next day when the headmaster of the school came down to me with a grin from ear to ear. He said, I have a request, he said, that I've never had before. He said, my girls want to come down and actually help in the construction project.
Wow.
I said, sure, bring them down. So that dilapidated bathhouse that you saw, I said, they can tear that down. And I showed them how, again with the rudimentary tools and stuff. And they actually did it better than the guys because they saved every brick. They did not break one brick. The bricks that they took down were actually used in the construction of the new bathhouse. This is, when I got there, it was a treed lot. And in 16 days, we got to that point.
Wow.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have updated, I think it's completed now,
Yeah,
so we'll have to get
yeah,
it
the
from
roof is
here.
up there now. That's the new bathhouse that was being built. And as you can see, they now have their own separate bathing stalls.
So now I continued, I wanted to go meet recipients of Bridges to Malawi. And so I got to go out into the bush to different places where this woman had lost her husband to AIDS and she has children and she needed money, so they gave her a goat, and then the goat had more goats. And then I asked her, how did her life change since she received the goat? And she said she was able to earn money by selling the other goats, the offspring, and she was able to pay for schooling for her children, because you have to pay for high school in Malawi. You only have, I think, up to junior high free, and then you have to, if you want high school, you have to pay. And she said she was also able to replace the thatch roof with a metal roof, so she was very appreciative of this goat pass on. She just said one thing to me, said, hey, why don't you tell them, the bigwigs, that they should be a goat and a dog program, not just a goat. And I'm like, a dog? She goes, yeah, because there's hyenas that come out at night and they kill my goats, so I need a dog, a watchdog. They have a chicken pass-on program where you get 4 chickens, and as they multiply, you can sell them. But the chickens are a great source of protein for the eggs. Right, and then eventually
Right.
chickens.
And what they mean by a pass-on is from the first offspring, the litters and stuff, from the goats and the chickens, they need to take a male and a female and they pass it on to the next farmer. And the next farmer receives them, again with the agreement that once they have more little ones, they'll pass it on.
And I met a lot of businesses that benefited from the Bridges to Malawi microloan program. They only lend them $10, and they're able, with $10, able to, if they had a vegetable stand, they were able to build a building to have as a little store. If they made a tea room, I met a lot of families that benefited from this loan, and they pay it back within 6 months. And JT, what was the criteria for the loan?
Oh, they never gave it to the guys because the guys would blow the money on either the liquor or the women. And they never gave it to a single woman. It was always a group of women because they would always hold each other accountable in the business venture.
I went to an area where they're growing a lot of this Artemisia plant, and it's to help cure malaria. And this is a plant, I think at WPI with Pam Weathers had come up with this, discovered, I think, this cure. So I know Dr. Liss and Pam Weathers, they're all working together about growing plants to help cure malaria.
This is so huge. I mean, if you think about it, if I could offer you a plant that you could grow in your backyard that would cure cancer, no matter how bitter the tea might taste, would you do it? Well, that's what it is. The Artemisia plant actually is curing and preventing malaria.
So at the end of our stay, so most of the time you're working hard every day. The last couple of days, they bring us sightseeing to a national forest where we got to see some baboons and elephants, and it was wonderful seeing all the wild animals. And one of our field trips we went, if you've heard of the book, The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, we got to actually visit the actual site where the boy grew up. And I got to meet, that's his father right there, William's father. And William wasn't there, but he told us all about everything. So it was kind of fascinating. If you haven't seen the movie, it's also a Netflix movie, The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. It's a book and a movie. I highly recommend you watch it because it really puts you into what we experienced in Malawi. It was a similar village to where we were. Everything, it was very, all my brothers and sisters watched it when they heard. When I came back, I said, wow, and they said, wow, now we know what you went through. It's unbelievable. Our last night, I thought, how thoughtful. They bring us to a nice resort, we get to lounge, and finally, hot showers. And then I said, oh, I know their method to the madness. They don't want 36 people getting on the airplane, flying for 34 hours, and they haven't had a shower. But anyway, that was our trip. And it was fantastic. And the people there are so warm and welcoming, and they're friends for life. I can't say enough about them over there.
You know, I mean, some personal experiences over there, you get into a third world country like that where they have nothing, yet they will give you the shirts off their backs if you needed it. One of the gals wanted to try their sema, which is their mainstay of food. It's corn that's dried out in the sun, and then they mash it and grind it by hand, and then they put it in boiling water and they make kind of this pasty dough. It really has no nutritional value and quite honestly has no taste. So you usually mix it with the sauces and things that are on your plate, and it'll fill you up. But one of the gals when she first got there was like, she just wanted to try a little bit of the sema. Oh no. The family made her sit and gave her an entire meal, you know, out of what they had cooked for their own family. So they ate less to share with her.
Yeah, they're very generous and
You
sweet.
know? And the exchange rate over there, it's almost 1,000 kwacha to $1, which is a little strange because with our host family, she wanted to go food shopping, and I'm like, look, you know, please let me pitch in and help and stuff. So she made up her list, and she came back to me, and she said, well, it's 20,000 kwacha. Well, at first I'm thinking, oh my God, it's 20 bucks. That's all, okay, yeah, fine. And it just, you know, when you get there and you deal with that stuff and you meet people like that, there was never harsh words spoken from any of them at all, between each other or anything. It was just, they're so welcoming, they're so compassionate, they're really, really trying extremely hard to work themselves up. And yes, they're extremely poor, and people have said to me when Alyson and I have done some presentations, well, we are poor in this country, which we do, because I worked in the Appalachian area on the Jesuit Volunteer Corps. My answer, however, is yes, we have poor in this country. Although it may be hard and difficult, there is the opportunity to pull yourself out of that poverty. Over there, that opportunity does not exist at this point in time. And that's why they're one of the 3 poorest countries in the world.
I couldn't get over the children, barefoot, ripped clothing, running around, laughing, playing, just happy, happy, happy. And they had nothing. They didn't have toys. They didn't have anything. And they were still happy. So it was a very rewarding experience. I highly recommend you all go experience it. But thank you very much, and
Anybody have any questions?
Any questions? We can turn the lights back on.
Is that the doctor and
Yes.
two doctors with Dr.
Yes.
That's Peter. Yes,
Yep.
Peter and Jackie.
There's
Exactly, yeah.
Dr. Brian Liss, and there's Peter and Jackie. They both came. This is a new gentleman who's a dairy farmer out in, Westminster, Mass, and he's going to help with Dr. Brian Liss and getting their dairy up and going over there. Brian Liss has a ton of ideas, and he's just constantly expanding his programs. And that's where JT came on with construction. So he's continually expanding. He has this woman over here is the IT specialist, and his niece is an IT specialist. So there's a lot of people from all walks of life. But thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to share. And I want to thank the Lions Club, wearing my Council on Aging hat too, for your helping the seniors in Stow. You always are very generous and make donations, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yep. I think we're good. So is it changed up a little bit from the last one, so you get to see? Well, we did an armchair travel at the COA, but I